Hello everyone, this is a midterm review and we are going to have a midterm, 51 questions, 50 minutes, and it covers chapters from 2 to 5. And if you are looking for a detailed list of things that need to be there, that will be there, you can go to our modules and the last week will be a review, the last visible to you, of course. And everything, all these words are very, very relevant to the test. So some of the test questions will be about naming things and knowing what they are. For example, what are logical operators? And for example, out of the list, which one is not a logical operator? So it's a multiple choice. Another type of questions will be a few lines of code and you are to tell what does this code do. Okay, so going about it chapter by chapter, I prepared a few exercises that will, or illustrations that will help you to remember what the chapter was about. So chapter 2, print hello. Here it is. We printed hello. Next one, remember the escape characters. Escape characters are, for example, \n, that's a new line, double quote, that is quotation mark, and this will print a single backlash. Then we can define x being 5, but this 5 is a string. In quotation means it's a string. We can convert it to float and to int, and let's run this. So let's check what we did. Hello statement, escape characters, colon, then I did new line character, that's why we're continuing the new line, couple of blank spaces after that. Then quotation mark, \quotation mark, that's what made it. And finally, a single backlash. Find the full list of escape characters in chapter 2 slides or in the book. And the next one, printing statement over here, printing y and z. Y was a float, even if it is a whole number, floats are denoted like 5.0. And z was an integer, so z is just 5. All right, I'd like to remind you about the function calls. So we can do nested function calls, such as, and what we did a bunch of times, int of input. So first of all, we got input. Input returns a string, important to remember. It returns a string and then it's converted to an int. As for the way the input itself works, that's just an input, and you must have a variable prepared to store the value that the user inputs. Here is a string literal, so that is one of the data types we need. This is an integer, this is a Boolean value, true or false, and this is a float. Naming your variables, actually the same rules apply to naming your functions. Cannot be a Python keyword, cannot contain spaces, first letter should be a letter or underscore, and others are letters, digits, and underscores. And names should reflect use. Well, did I cover everything about chapter 2? Oh yeah, type conversion. Let's talk about the conversions. We need to convert between the types. Oh, math operations. So remember the math operations, you dealt with them a lot, including remainder and integer division. Review them if you need to. All right, so basically if you apply a correct operation to the same types, integer and integer, you get an integer. But if you, for example, multiply float and integer, the result will be a float. So integer value over here will be parsed to a float for the sake of the computation. Int operation cuts off the fractional part. Int of 2.7 equals 2. Good to remember. You can do usually int to float is changing to a wider data type. That is always safe. The other way around, changing float to int is not as safe and can lose some data. There are explicit changes and implicit changes. For example, if your float is actually 5.0, you can convert it to int without any losses. And I think that's about it. If you want to recall something about the format, do so. And that's all with Chapter 2. All right, on the subject of Chapter 3, this is what you will need to know. Let's start with logical operators and Boolean variables. Okay, I defined x equals 3, y equals 5, z equals 7. I want to check if x is actually equal to y. And this is a Boolean, it returns true or false, and as you can see, it will return false. In a very similar fashion, I can check not equal to, x not equal to y, it's true. We should look at more complicated expressions, for example, x less than y and z less than x. Parentheses are actually not needed here for clarity. In any case, this is an AND between two booleans. By itself, this will return true, and this will return z less than x will return false. So the AND between them will return false. The only way how an AND statement will return true is if each of these guys are true. Similar but different for OR. So if I change this to OR statement, OR is true when at least one of the substatements, maybe both of them, are true. In other words, how OR statement can be false if this guy is false and this guy is false and no other way. In this case, we know that x is less than y, and so the whole statement is true. A word needs to be put for short circuit evaluation. In fact, we didn't have to check the second condition for the OR statement because we found that the first one is true, and that's enough for the whole OR statement to be true. If I change that sign, now this highlighted statement is false, and the AND operator does not have to check the second one. If one of them is false, the whole AND statement is false. And finally, not x greater than y returns true. So not false is true, not true is false. So that is all that needs to be said about the false operator. Of course, we used Booleans in different ways. For example, a equals to hello. And then we said that we can check if a equals to hello. That is true, of course. Now let's look at this little cute program about if-else statement. X equals to 0, I just decided that, originally defined the x value. Now, if x is not equal to 0, notice the colon and the print statement is indented. Print not 0, else colon print is 0. Whenever you have a colon in Python, you know you need to do the indentation, and there should be some indented statement after it. And we can run it, of course, and it will work as you expect it to work. So is 0. And if my x was 5, and I run it again, not 0. So in the last case, x was equal to 5. This Boolean statement, this Boolean value is false. Sorry, is true. X not equal to 0 is true. And hence this println statement is executed. Now else is technically optional. We could have a program without else, but very often is very useful. So if statement catches all values except for 0, and else catches everything else that is x equals to 0. Well, not quite. Maybe I can change the data type. So 0 in quotes, and guess what will happen? Take a moment, think about it, and I run it. Not 0. Why do you think that happened? The check over here tries to match a string value 0 to a numeric value 0, and they are not the same, and hence not 0. So that is something to be aware of as you are programming. Probably you have seen it already and learned that already. Okay, yeah, if you did homework, you probably have dealt with issues like that. And let us try something else. Let us use elif. Elif is another thing that we need to be aware of. Elif x not equal to 1, print, I guess, not 1. And now my x is equal to 0. Okay, so if works first, it's gonna catch the not 0 thing. And guess what is going to happen next? Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna change it to 5 to avoid any confusion. So x equals to 5. If x is not 0, which is true now, x is not 0, we'll print not 0. Is it going to go on and check that x is not equal to 1? No, it's not going to. So let's double check that. Not 0, and the program is done. So if one of the conditions, if or else if, elif means else if the first one was false, then the second one is checked. If one of these conditions was true, the further ones are not checked and not executed. So there is really no way to reach this one. I mean, it can be checked, but the not one statement will never be executed because of it. So pause and think why. In any case, also you need to know this is one if elif else statement. We have seen long if elif else statements. We have seen embedded or nested if else statements and such. Go back to the programs in the public folder, find one, and make sure you are comfortable. So read some code, it's good for you. This is pretty much it about chapter 3. You might want to go back to the slides and look at comparing strings, but you guys had such a so many comments and discussions about comparing strings that probably you remember how it works. Yeah, don't forget the shortcut, short circuit evaluation or shortcut evaluation that may come up.